everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Part 2 Book Club. We may have done that a few times already. If you are joining us and you can see the video as opposed to just watching the podcast, you will notice I am in dog pajamas. So I'm going to give you the 5-minute backstory of the dog pajamas. So my daughter Mia is 2 years old and as sly as a fox. And unless I also get ready for bed, old mate just won't go to sleep. So I've had to get ready for bed, put Mia down to sleep, and yeah, you now find me in pajamas. But today's podcast is absolutely focused on the second book that we're reviewing, which was my book of choice. And that book, of course, is Your Dad Will Do by Katee Roberts. So the 2-second backstory to this book was we obviously started with Runaway Love. That was Sian's dipping of our toes into the romance genre. I went to a friend who shall remain nameless and said, I need something super spicy. And I was guaranteed that this was absolutely nothing like Runaway Love. And that is how we got here. I think it's safe to say we were all relatively surprised when it came through the post and was
very thin.
Very thin.
Super thin. Super surprised, but also super happy.
So a quick plot synopsis, and I'll try not to give too much away, although I do probably just want to warn anyone, if you haven't actually read it and you are listening to this podcast, we are going to probably give it all away. But essentially, girl breaks up with boyfriend, has always harbored feelings for boyfriend's father, and decides to turn up at his house one night and seduce the father. And she does a good job of seducing him.
Nailed it.
Let's just put it that way. It was definitely described as erotica, and it was definitely also described as kind of the daddy daughter
baby girl kink.
That's it, baby girl kink. And that is, it definitely delivers on all of that. So to be honest with you, it does absolutely everything it says on the tin.
Well, Zara and friends. What was interesting was obviously it throws you straight into the deep end, and there's a knock on the door. Poor little victim decides to have some revenge sex with father-in-law, and then it's like, there's no start, middle, end. It's just like we'll get straight into it. So there was, well, not necessarily a shock, but there was no build up and no tension like the other book, the first book. And I found it really hard to get my head around or be comfortable with the daddy thing. Not necessarily because I've got children and I call my husband daddy, because of the kids. Daddy. No, because he's their dad.
No, I get that.
Yeah. No, we don't do that. But
let's just clarify that.
Even he flicked through the book and he was like, "Oh God, no, I can't. Like, this is just," and it was weird, and it felt really weird. But you get used to it quite quickly. And there's no plot, there's no storyline. The ending, in short, I felt the ending it kind of sucked because, as we discussed beforehand, why not just keep it short and sweet and spicy, flingy thing. They got it out their systems and then they went off and did their own thing. However, when I kind of reflect on the story, I feel like there is this underlying, they clearly had feelings for each other, the girl and the father-in-law, and under normal circumstances they probably would have gone and got straight into it and hopped onto each other, whatever, but they couldn't. So there was that, I think there's a story about, actually, did they really, were there true feelings there? And they, they kind of, because of Max and Sarah, they wanted to be together. And I think that's the underlying story, was that maybe there was some sort of true romance, or maybe it was just lust, but they couldn't because of the social structures in place. And maybe that's a bit sad. I don't know. Bless you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started off actually quite hating it, and then towards the end I was like, you know what? It serves a person. It serves a purpose.
Yeah.
They serve each other as people.
do they?
Yeah. And I think there is clearly an audience that really wants to read that. And I'm not that audience, but there are people that do. And I think it would have done a great job. So that's my summary. Yeah.
Sarah Elaine. I won't say your full name, but
Sarah Elaine.
You had some thoughts. You were also we'd all read it, so you kind of got some spoilers along the way because we couldn't not talk about it once we started reading it.
So you mentioned the device.
The device.
That plug.
You'd mentioned the device, so I knew that was going to feature in it. There was a lot I really liked.
Oh.
But I think this is positioned off the back of reading the last book, which I didn't like.
Yeah.
That I mean, it's the similar thing. You know, we've got my notes again.
Yes.
You know, you've got the weaker female character jilted in a similar way. You know, being cheated on. You know, a weekend of sex ensues. Like the similar in those two sort of central plot lines. What I liked about this one is it wasn't trying to be really anything other than, you know, a weekend of continuous sex, like literally continuous sex. There seemed to be very little break. They popped out sometimes. I struggled with the language. I think the nickname of my daddy and my baby girl, I think if you'd like got rid of that and made it say like baby and babe, honey, you know, I probably would have liked it more, because there was some scenes or there was some text and I thought, oh, this is good, and then you get to that line and I go like, I can't go with it at that point because that's not my bag, you know. But I'm brand new to the sort of literary erotica genre, so I imagine that is some people's, you know, bag, shall we say. Yeah,
I was going to say, but I think, and sorry, moving on, sorry, Sean, I agree with you, because actually they're throwing in an extra layer of like this other, the dad daughter thing, or the dad baby girl thing. I don't think it was necessary. In fact, I think it completely detracted from the whole storyline, which is his father-in-law. Don't have to then call him daddy.
Yeah. No, because I think he was kind of like sexy in himself. Like,
yeah,
it didn't need to be that, you know. And funny enough, the only page that I marked talked about his age. As a 40-year-old woman.
I can't remember how old he was.
47, Sean.
Okay, 47.
47. So that
literally a year older than my own husband.
I'm reading it thinking, you know, this older man, and I've got this sort of like real pepper-haired, silver fox kind of, you know,
Name the
Steve
actor.
Jaw style character in my head that's, you know, in the late 50s, you know, maybe even pushing 60. And then it was a bit of a bringing myself back down to earth that I'm a 40-year-old woman reading this.
Yeah.
So 47 to someone in their 20s reading this is going to seem the same. Yeah. But I liked that they ended up together. And this, I think, was for me, I wasn't that fussed in the previous book, but in this one, I was kind of rooting for them. You know, he seemed protective of her. He wasn't as like whiny or whingy. He was like, this is what we're doing. You know, he communicated how he felt. There was, I think, that little bit of tension in the, you know, she kind of wanted to say she loved him too soon, but she kind of wanted to say she loved him. She didn't know what he was going to say. There was more of a tension, I think. Yeah. I thought from a language point of view, or from a literary sort of point of view, I thought the weird text message thing was a bit shit.
Yeah.
And
Cop out.
And then, but I was then happy that 6 months later he was still waiting for her, because I did ultimately want them to get together. I thought, you know what, he's going to look after her, and she probably deserves it, and she seems like a hardworking, nice girl. And you know, she wasn't just willing to just give herself to him. She was like, I'm going to deal with my problems. I'm going to, you know, I had more respect for her, I think. Less so with what she then did, you know, at the end, sort of on the lounger.
I was like, what did she do? Yeah.
Oh, she
I remember.
Yeah, but I did have more respect for the characters, which is why I enjoyed it more. I think they not developed more. That's the wrong thing to say. They didn't develop more. They had more integrity. I think the characters had more integrity than I was expecting when I read the first few pages, and for that I respected them more as literary individuals.
Yeah.
Nice. Sean Rice, you are our romance guru. I'm assuming you've read a couple of this ilk.
Erotica.
Thoughts?
It was absolutely no surprise to me whatsoever. It covers a few tropes, so erotica, age gap, the daddy kink, and it was all right. It was exactly what I expected. It didn't pretend to be anything else, like Sarah said. It does exactly what it says on the tin. I have always struggled with the daddy baby girl kink, always. So for me, it just makes me cringe. And I have tabbed literally 3 things in this book. Two are things that made me cringe, and one that made me laugh. Would you like to hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one that made me laugh was, I'm going to fuck you and I'm going to date you, and it would serve that little shit right if I married you and made you his stepmother. He's saying this about his own son.
No,
Like,
so weird.
what is that? Same page, but a little bit cringy. Your daddy knows what you need, baby girl. Now get back on this call.
Oh, yeah, I just can't. Oh God, stop. Let's bring it all back.
And then the last, I can't remember what the last one was. Okay. And another cringe one for you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just this bit. Shane treats me like I'm a precious fuck toy, and I can't get enough.
Yeah, Shane's the dad, just so everyone knows.
Shane's the
Also,
dad.
just another little bit of backstory. My brother's name is Shane, and my dog's name is Lily.
Completely.
So that just took me a minute.
The second I started, because I was the first one to start reading it, the second I started reading it, I texted Zara and I was like, you're going to have issues just with the characters' names. But in fairness, they're only really known as Shane and Lily for like page 1.
I forgot,
Yeah.
honestly.
After that point, Danny and Belle, which brings me into my kink issues. But no, it did exactly what it said on the tin. Some of it was really hot, some of it was a bit cringe. But yeah, it was exactly what I was expecting, especially when I saw how not thick the book is. Because when a book doesn't have that many pages,
It's
with,
good.
with the plot that it has, like, it was just going to be pure.
Filth.
Like, it wasn't like there's no space to like plot anything else that for a real storyline. But yeah, I kind of didn't want them to get together at the end, like, and I'm normally the one that's reading any romance book, but in this one I was like, do you know what? I kind of like that it was a fling, like a taboo fling, something they shouldn't have done, and they got it out of their systems, and that was that. So I didn't hate that they got together. I just wasn't rooting for it. So I mean, and there was my thoughts.
Nice.
What about you, Z?
Your face.
So when I first started reading it, but it was actually at Sean's house, and interestingly, I read this erotic novel between the hours of 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. 3 mornings in a row while I was letting my daughter watch Dougie at Sean's house, which is weird. But when I first started reading it, I was like, I highly dislike this. I dislike the daddy thing. I dislike the submissive bullshit thing with her, and I dislike this. I dislike that, and I think this is a romance thing, but this whole, like, getting, she comes to climax like that.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Right? And I was really starting to get like, what have I been doing wrong?
Is there something wrong with me?
Then I kind of let go of that, and I was like, you know what? At no point in this book, or on the cover of this book, or this writer of this book, has said that this is like Pride and Prejudice or War and Peace or like Anna Karenina. What they've said is this is a bit of escapism. This is like a little bit of naughty. And when I kind of took my, I'm looking for plots and like really big character developments away, and actually just took a bit of a philosophical view of it, which was, I can totally understand why this is very appealing for certain women. I'll try and explain myself. So I'm a solo mum by choice, so I make every decision in my household. I make every appointment for my daughter. I make every decision about her healthcare. I make every primary school and nursery school and all of that stuff, right? I make all of those decisions. And there's an awful lot of mothers out there and women out there, actually, like even with like certain women in relationships, even minus kids, right? They make all the decisions, whatever. They get into bed at the end of the night and they're effing exhausted. And they've made big decisions, small decisions, but thousands of them that day, right? And they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders. And all of a sudden you start reading this book, which is filthy, but in a like, it was fine. Like, it, you know, harmless
Yeah.
way, right? No one was getting attacked. There was nothing terrible happening.
Yeah, it's not a dark romance. Like,
It's not dark. It wasn't dark whatsoever. But this woman submitted, and this man said, I'm gonna basically tell you what to do, from when you're gonna orgasm to what you're gonna wear to where you're gonna be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like what we're gonna do, when we're gonna do it. And I did genuinely sit back and think, I get it. That type of escapism and like submission and like let someone else just take control. The daddy baby girl thing, that needs to go. Like,
agreed.
I think she could have done that in a much more dominate, submissive type way. So, you know what? Is it my cup of tea? Probably not. Like, am I reaching for another book of hers? Like, probably not. Yeah, look, I think it's an honest book. I think it's super honest in what it is. And yeah.
And I think we were chatting about this earlier. So there's also the element of voyeurism, or not just voyeurism. Yeah, there's voyeurism, but also, you know, being very risky in front of other people and at the pool, etc., car park, where it is risky excitement. And I think a lot of people, again, it's that escapism where, you know, you want to open a book, read all this stuff which you wouldn't necessarily do, but it's, you know, probably very bloody exciting for someone to just read about, right? And again,
especially when all you've done that day is be risk adverse with your family, right? Like, I guess one of the questions I had for you guys, was there anything in it, though? I think we've talked about that, like we've talked fairly at length about the daddy baby girl stuff, but there was probably a couple of other things in there that I felt was a bit it didn't 100% fit, didn't quite feel right. I wanted to just throw it open to you guys to see what your thoughts were, and if there was anything that you thought. I think you had a thought specifically on.
I mean, it wasn't not necessarily that it didn't fit, but I think it's clearly, and Sian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole size you know, massive wanger thing is erotica.
No one wants to read about a micropeen, Alicia.
Some people, it could be a genre in itself, Sian, so never say never.
Well,
but you're
I'll
right.
find it for you.
Very niche. Very niche. So it wasn't that it was fairly predictable, and, you know, the whole description around it, there was a lot, it felt really quite a big theme throughout the book. Did it need, I mean, maybe that's a real thing that certain women really want to read about. I wasn't that bothered.
Out of curiosity, I have a question for you, Sian, given you're like
the guru,
some sort of expert, but
sex.
Is there any not tropes? What am I trying to say? Is there any kind of romance novels where that isn't a thing, where they kind of...
I have definitely read books where the size isn't even really mentioned at all, but you will find in majority of romance novels, it's always big. They're always wondering how it's going to fit. So, yeah, it's generally they're going to be massive because it's fiction. It's a fantasy world.
Yeah.
You know, even though it's real life stories, it's not like the fantasy genre. It's still a fantasy world. It's a fictional world, and in a fictional world, you don't want a guy who can't please you.
Yeah.
Not that you need a big dong to do that. Motion in the ocean and all.
I think that's a really good takeaway. And so you were saying you had a thought around the controversial.
Yeah, so not so much maybe it was a bit controversial, but for me, what shocked me, I suppose, was Max's complete lack of reaction. So he walks in on his ex-fiance, and when I say ex-fiance, it's been days.
Yep.
It has been like 3 or 4 days since she was his ex-fiance. He walks in on her riding his dad, and he just stands there, watches them climax, walks out, and then has a conversation with her downstairs, like, "Oh, so you fucked my dad then?" What non-reaction is that? I didn't understand that part at all. I was like, what? Surely, even if he didn't ever love her or whatever, surely you would still have a much bigger reaction than that because it's your ex and your dad. Yes, Sarah.
I think from a literary perspective, that dialogue was meant to highlight how much he had already moved on before she discovered that he'd been cheating on her and started sleeping with her father. I think that sort of indifference of his was there to highlight that.
I was going to say, do you not think that even if that was the case, I think any man walking in on his ex-fiance and father would still have more of
a shock, right?
of a shit about it because of the shock, and also the, like the arrogance or whatever to say. I don't know. I felt like Max was just so blasé about it. I can't imagine anyone being that.
I'm not saying that was demonstrative of like great literary writing.
No.
I'm just saying I think that's possibly why
yeah.
he had him so chilled out, like, well, my girlfriend, and she's like, oh, your secretary's now your girlfriend. I think that's what it
it's a good point. I probably agree with Sean and Alicia though. I guess I have a different take on it, which was it just felt a bit lazy writing. It felt like you probably could have written a bit more of a dialogue. You probably could have written a bit more of a, like, we've been over for such a long time. But I'm a little bit angry that you chose my dad.
But it was right at the end of the book, which was right before the speed texts that sort of, the end of the book in a small book was hyper fast. You get these bizarre text messages over a chapter or two between the two of them, and then they end up together. So I think when you say lazy writings I do kind of agree. I think it was a really quick way to end the whole book, which was Max isn't bothered. It's Max, isn't it? Yeah. Max isn't bothered. I do think that was supposed to show that he completely moved on long before her, and text message, personal growth, and end up together.
Yeah, I completely agree. It was my point, so I agree. But no, I agree with you. But also, I do think if she'd added in some deeper, meaningful conversation, I think we would be sat here saying, "Where did that come from?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like just a bit more confrontation about it, more than a deep and meaningful, more than, oh, I don't care.
I wish she hadn't.
Something in the middle.
I wish she hadn't shown up at all.
Oh yeah, so they were making that video to send Max to inform him of their relationship, and that in itself was just, what are you doing?
And the whole videoing thing, I also found just was slightly unnecessary. It didn't really go anywhere. It was like a weird, but it was I don't know. Like,
I liked it.
Was it just part of this voyeurism thing, or like slight risky thing?
It's the risk thing, right?
It's a risk thing.
Someone's got that video.
I think there is a real sort of, like you said, like in terms of themes of the book, the risk taking. But I think what Zara said. I think the whole voyeurism is a bit of a theme, like making a video to send, them doing stuff in the garden with the neighbors very clearly looking, and being in the car, which I have a problem with because she was in the car and she was crying with things inserted, and and people driving past, and I think, doesn't Max see them in the car but doesn't know it's her because she's laid over?
I think there's probably one or two issues. The first is the talk, we talked about that, but like the daddy, whatever. But the second is the end. Yeah. Don't like the ending whatsoever.
Which part? Spoiler alert.
All of it. So here's what I loved about the book, that she shows up, she seduces him, it works. They have this insanely like sexual weekend, and then all of a sudden there's lifelong commitments and all this rubbish. Is it not sexier to think you had this weekend, you live in the same town, you are going to see each other from time to time, you've got a video, and every now and again, maybe you see each other in the supermarket, you've moved on with your lives, but you nod, you wink, and you go home and you remember, like, wow, that was like a weekend that no one will ever know about except us and the video. And it's this thing, this illicit thing that you only have between these two, you two, but you never talk about it ever again. You move on with your lives, whatever.
Oh, and only the two of them ever know. Yeah.
And then the only other thing which I've been funny about, but I do mean this in all sincerity, is the fact that he walked into a sex shop, he bought a butt plug, and then he used the butt plug in the car, and he like didn't even clean it. And I'm not a prude, but clean your sex toys, guys, before you use them. That's all I'm saying.
And in between use.
Yes, and I understand you can use the dishwasher.
I was going to say, put it in the dishwasher.
We googled it, have we, Zara?
Sure, let's say that. You've got to the punchy end, kids.
Scores on the doors.
Scores on the doors.
I'm between 2.5 and 3. I might push more towards 3, because what I liked about this book was the
Has it shocked you?
Yeah, that's really shocked me.
In a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way. I thought she would be higher.
No. Doesn't. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not judging. I'm just I thought you were going to go higher, but okay.
No, because I'm allowing for my socks are going to be blown off. The reason why I would give it 3 stars is I found the unapologetic, doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. I quite liked the fact that they got together. Although, having now listened to you guys, I'm sort of like, well, I can see reasons why it would have been maybe a better book actually if they hadn't. But I want to leave myself open to more stars. So I can't go higher than 3. But I think, do you know what? She's, like I said, she's writing for an audience, and I think she nails the audience.
Nice. Charlotte.
I'm being 2.5. I do think it does exactly what it said on the tin. But as I say, I have always struggled with the daddy baby girl kink terminology. And I do also kind of struggle with novellas, just because you don't have the space in a shorter book to have all that build up in the preamble. And I enjoy the build up in the preamble, it's the anticipation. I love a slow burn, because I like all of that before bit, but I wasn't expecting that from this book. So it's not like I didn't feel robbed because I wasn't expecting it. But yeah, and the Max situation, I just didn't get it. I didn't get it at all. But other than that, it did exactly what it said on the tin. It was quite hot in most places, and then there were things that made me cringe as I read out to you. Yeah. But no, 2.5. It was right in the middle for me.
Okay, so I'm going to give it a 2.
Oh, you surprised me. I was thinking a 1.
I'm going to save the 1 for
Runaway Bride.
really terrible book.
Probably the book Sarah chooses.
Yeah, that one.
That'll be me.
Whatever it is. I think that I totally understand the audience that it was written for, that it's, straight into the action. Like Sian said, I also like, setting the scene, a bit more of a storyline, the build up before you go straight into the drama. I just didn't really want to read it. I couldn't wait to the end, and it got a little bit better with the change of scenery, and Max walking in, I guess, was like, yay, there's a bit more action apart from the sex.
It's another character. Yay!
Yay! But I get who it's written for. I know it's unapologetic, totally understand, but I'm not that audience, so I'll give it 2 because I expect worse will come up. Didn't love it, didn't particularly hate it, but I was quite happy with the length of the book because I just wanted it to finish.
I'm giving it a 4.
Considering you started off hating it.
Yeah.
Completely. And I think I had to shed an ego. Like, I had to shed what, like, it's supposed to have this, that, and the other thing. Or it's supposed to be mind-numbing, like, sex that I've not had. And I just think she knows her writer. Sorry, she knows her audience. She writes for her audience. I think there's bits of it that I like. If I ever met her, I'd say these are probably little bits I would shift and change. But otherwise, I'm going to give it a good solid 4 stars and say, you know what? If what you're looking for is to genuinely just feel that escapism, and I do think that there's a little bit of 50 Shades. This is kind of like the next level on from 50 Shades, if that makes sense. I think 50 Shades is if you want to dip your toe into that kind of like highly sexual space. This is probably the next stage on from that. But yeah, 4 stars, I reckon.
Fair
That's
enough.
excellent work.
Awesome. So we have got 2. Did you say 3 in the end, Sarah?
Stars.
What, stars?
That was, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 3 because I gave the last one 1, so I feel this is 2 stars above. So yeah, I'm gonna give it 3.
So 3 from Sarah. Sean, your final was 2?
Yes.
2.5?
I'm going with 2.
2, and I'm 4. So it's actually done better than Runaway Bride.
Runaway Love.
Runaway Love.
Great movie.
It's a good movie.
If you've made it this far, again, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you guys. But we do really want to know what you think about this one. Now, we have had a number of our followers already been messaging us or commenting on what they thought of the book. And it was a relative mixed bag, I have to say. Love it. It's kind of a polarizing situation. But we'd love to hear what you think. If you haven't already read it, you could read it in a couple of days. As always, everyone, remember to follow us on the socials. We are part2_book club at Instagram. We are part2 book club on TikTok. Join us, get amongst it, chat, DM us. We'd love to hear from you. But in the meantime, stay safe. So from the 4 corners of the UK, for at least another week and a half, bye, Sarah. Bye, Shani. Goodbye, Alicia.
Goodbye.
Love you all. Be good. If you can't be good, be careful.
Don't be careful, take pictures.
Or videos.
Bye.